these saints were.
Can you tell us what saint was an embezzler?
So here, our audience, you're going to be challenged with these saints. He was an embezzler. Well, I'll give you some hints. First of all, this saint lived in the 3rd century. He died around the year 220, 222. We don't know exactly the specific dates. But let me give you some background. In the year 190, now this is the period of persecution. You know, in the first 250 years of Christianity, every pope but one was martyred. So when they chose someone, they said, you're going to be the next Holy Father.
That might have been the death sentence.
You knew this was the death sentence. So in the year 190, there was a Christian named Carpophorus who wanted to establish a bank in Rome to help the Christians in Rome. Particularly, he wanted to help widows so they'd have a safe place to put their money. So far, so good.
That's a good, noble cause, right?
Right. Then he has a slave. This is going to be our eventual hero, who had experience with handling money. So he puts him in charge of the bank. What does he do? He squanders the money in bad investments and embezzlements, thefts for himself. Well, then the inevitable happens. The bank fails. So what does he do? He flees Rome. He takes off. He hops on a ship and he's trying to escape, but because of the weather, he's stuck on the ship. So his master chases him down, and when he sees the master coming in a rowboat, he dives overboard.
This guy didn't want to be caught.
So the sailors, anyway, they eventually catch him. He's brought back to Rome, and of course he's convicted for embezzlement. And he's sentenced to life of hard labor. And what they do is they chain him to a grist mill. So he's going to be pushing this big stone around and around and around for the rest of his life until he drops dead there. This is his fate.
Okay, that's not a pleasant thought.
Not a pleasant thought. Now, this is where the story gets amazing. Someone intervenes for him. And the people who intervene for him are the people that he defrauded.
Okay, stop right there. That's the huge Christian message right there, isn't it?
Of forgiveness.
Yes.
Of prayer. And so you see another element here. And so they go to, and they plea that he'll be released, and based on that, he is released. Well, now you would think, oh, well, now we're going to get all the good news. Oh, no, no. What he does then is he disrupts a service at a synagogue because he's trying to pass the blame for his bad decisions on Jewish merchants, and ends up engaging in a brawl in the synagogue.
So even after he's been shown some mercy, he's still not taking responsibility for his actions.
It's their fault. And so he gets dragged out of the synagogue, and he's taken before the magistrate. Now he gets scourged, and he's sentenced to the mines in Sardinia. This was an absolute death sentence. If you went to the mines in Sardinia, no one came out of that alive. Now, at this point, the story takes another turn. Marcia, who was the mistress of the emperor, decides to intervene for Christians who are condemned to the mines in Sardinia.
That's an interesting side note right there, isn't it?
But this slave is not included because his life is so evil, because he's an embezzler, he's a liar, he's a brawler. No one considers him a Christian, so he's not on the list. So when they come to let these people out, he begs for mercy, and they include him anyway. So now he's freed a second time. At this point, Pope Victor comes to his rescue and gives him a small allowance to live on, and assigns him to the care of a holy priest named Zephyrinus. Now, the priest Zephyrinus was in charge of the priests and deacons of Rome. And it's during this period that the slave begins to go through a conversion period.
A true, like it's real.
A true conversion. Well, in the year 199, Pope Victor died. And guess who they elect as Pope? Seghers. So he's the spiritual director and the mentor of the slave. So after Seghers becomes Pope, he ordains the slave to the diaconate. And he puts him in charge of the famous Christian cemetery that's on the Appian Way. In fact, I dare say that people in our audience have been there. They've been to the cemetery. It's called the Catacomb of St. Calixtus. So he's in charge of the catacomb, and now he's leading this very pious, holy life, this very simple man. And then in the year 217, Pope Seghers dies. And guess who gets elected Pope?
Who could it be?
Our slave. He is elected Pope, and there's opposition against him because his treatment of people is very kind and forgiving. And there was a lot of controversy at this time in Rome that led by someone else we'll talk about later, who believed that if a person committed a serious sin, you should never be forgiven.
Those are scary words.
Didn't deny that the church had the power, and especially because of persecutions. There were Christians who said abandoned Christ because they didn't want to be killed, and so this pope is allowing them to come back in the church. He's giving them forgiveness and admitting them to communion, and there's a lot of opposition to this. And finally, he's martyred by a mob on the streets of Rome where he's beaten to death. So this is our saint, this embezzler who became a pope. Can you name that saint?
You tell us who it is.
Saint Calixtus.